Welcome, everyone. Today is Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, and this is a regular meeting of the City of Asbury Park Zoning Board of Adjustments. Chairman Avalone, will you please call this meeting to order?
I'd be happy to. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and Asbury Park Press by publication of the annual meeting notice and posted on the municipal bulletin board and municipal website. All notices are on file with the board's secretary. Official action may be taken on the following matters before this board. Fire exits are located on the east and west sides of the council chambers as well as the back of the building. And I ask everyone with a cell phone to please mute it for the duration of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded by APTV. Roll call, please, Marie.
Wendy Glassman?
Here.
Daniel Harris?
Here.
Russell Lewis?
Here.
Recused from?
Recused from 704.
Got it. Recused. Jill Potter?
Here.
Tim Slick?
Here.
Jose Alcaraz?
Here.
Vice Chair John Scully?
Here.
Chairman Christopher Avalone?
Here.
Got it.
All right. Before we get started, I'd just like to mention the passing of a great advocate and civil servant of Asbury Park. On Easter Sunday morning, Dan DiBenedetto died after a decade-long battle with cancer. He came here in 1999 when Asbury was a very different town. He became the president of the Chamber of Commerce, then the chair of the planning board. He helped write the master plan of 2002 to jumpstart the revitalization of Asbury. He received 2 Carousel Awards and then became the municipal judge of Asbury. He was instrumental in how my husband and I purchased a home in Asbury, as well as why I am on the zoning board today. Out of respect for the Honorable Daniel DiBenedetto, I ask you to stand now for a moment of silence and reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, first up, some housekeeping. We have a resolution. I make a motion to approve the resolution of to adopt the resolution of 1109 Grand Avenue.
Second.
I'll second.
No other further comments? Everything is okay?
I think we're good.
The eligible members are Daniel Harris,
Yes.
Russell Lewis,
Yes.
Jill Potter,
Yes.
Jose Alcaraz,
Yes.
John Scully,
Yes.
Christopher Avalone.
Yes. Resolution adopted. Okay, first up is an old business. 13 Grant Point Way, Ocean View Developments, LLC. We're sitting here again on this application because of resolution non-compliance. There are several areas that were specifically stated in the resolution that were not followed by the owners. So here we are.
Big scheme of things in terms of how we're trying to work. I know you don't see it that way, but a good example is the neighbor to, if you're facing the house to the left, we were going to do with the planting component, right, which is putting some of the arborvitae screening along the left side of the driveway. So I get a phone call from Miss Alonzo, who had had some conversations with my client, and the neighbor said, hey, listen, you're going to cut down all my hydrangea here, and we don't really want that. And we said, but we have to do this. And they said, so when speaking with Miss Alonzo, she said, would you be willing to work with the neighbor to maintain what they have and then not make those disturbances? I said, well, look, we're happy to do anything to work with the neighbor because those are fully mature, very, very beautifully well-manicured property next to us. And in fact, that was a change that was made. Now, is that a change that we precipitated? It's just as easy for us to clear cut to our property line and pop in an arborvitae and we're in compliance. But what we did in that instance was we had a neighbor that had a concern. They were freaking out about it, reasonably so. Called the town enough to have the town call us, had a meeting, worked it through with Miss Alonzo, and we resolved the issue. And we continued the planting beyond it. So it's not as if we were just running roughshod and you know, I apologize if anybody thinks that we're just coming in here to try and pull the wool over your eyes. I have a problem, and I'm here to try and find a way to talk through it logically and try and solve it in a reasonable fashion. And, you know, that's really it, no more, no less. So, you know, and I know that it's not, you know, how we got here, I don't know. It certainly is enough for a lot of will, but I want to try and see if we can find a way forward from here.
So
You know,
along
because
those
I do think
lines,
the end product it's a beautiful product. I mean, I think we could agree on from what was there to what's here now. It's a very, very well manicured final product.
so along those lines, can you, Mr. Conator, can you discuss in further details the other fixes outside of a drop ceiling?
Fixes for this particular area in the basement?
Just the basement,
Yeah,
yes. Let's stick with that for
So
now.
the other option I suggested is not to take the existing floor out, there's a concrete slab, is to run new joists on top of the slab and a new subfloor. I mean, that would be the solution for that. Yes, they would have to raise hot water heaters and those pieces of equipment, but that would be the alternate solution.
And would you say that that would be a more permanent fix than a drop ceiling?
Yes, I would say that.
Are there any other options that you recommend?
I mean, what else can we do? I mean, the only other thing, you can rip out the entire slab and redo the whole thing. I don't think you could do that with getting the concrete in and getting concrete out of an existing structure like that.
I would like to have maybe Mr. Cano explain.
We have to finish with Mr. Conditori first, and then we can move on to the applicant himself.
Sure.
Okay, so we go to another item or?
I just have a question. So the design of the stairs, is that exactly what was approved? The stairwell that was installed?
Yeah, those stairs are, yes.
So the stairwell that's existing there today is what was approved?
Correct, same configuration.
Was the location?
To a different height. To a different height, obviously we had to add more stairs because the height changed, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, but so how and when did that happen? During the changes?
What do you understand? I don't understand the
Well,
question.
so you had an approved plan,
So they,
right?
they'll
You had an
have,
approved plan.
they'll have like for a stair condition, there are stairs drawn on the plan. They have a min height, you have a code, basically we state your risers have to be 9 inches by 8 inches and stuff. But they're gonna be built and framed by a carpenter, so he's just gonna go out there, take field measurements and build stairs for that specific location. So I don't get nothing from that, no one comes to me and says, oh, look at these new stair plans, it's just a simple wooden stair.
But here's my question. If they built it to your specifications, would the stairs work with a higher floor?
It's a tough, I'm trying to explain,
Well, no,
my
yeah, because
specifications are that it's,
you're trying to,
Because of the height.
They had, sorry.
Right, they had, so
They
sorry.
had to add a couple
So somebody had to add a couple
They
stairs.
hadn't done it when they.
So to Mr. Beacon's question, why don't you just remove those stairs and raise up the floor? Those ones that you had to add, not you, somebody had to add.
And or also it was another opportunity
Well,
to
the slab was
say, wait a
forward.
minute, this didn't
So, I
match
mean, I'm
the
sure
plan.
they'll-
Well, understand my questioning, Mr. Contore and board members. My questioning really is, it seems to be there's an issue with the header height.
Yes.
Would that still have been an issue with your design?
I don't believe so, but I can't say for certain. You know, once framing design is exactly science when they get in for clearances, I think it's off by like a couple inches. There's a very simple fix for it. We just have to do a little slope, which is common on a stair. The one joist is just unclear.
So your plans weren't clear?
No.
well, he may not have designed the joists. They may have
Yeah.
taken, you know, the
Framing is
the wood supplier, the framing supplier. Is
Framing
gonna
is-
say, oh, I can give you a TJI, or I can give you some other, you can just, you know, frame them.
A framer looks at dimensions and they just go. You know, they're not like, I'm not laying out exact studs and things like that nature in a construction plan that says. So the opening was tighter, and so there's just a little bit of a head clearance. I mean, it's common.
Do you actually know, like, could you So the problem's at the landing?
It's at the opening, so that bottom two stairs, as you come down.
As you come up to the landing?
Yes, in the basement, yes.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of a tight couple inch squeeze that we have to shave off.
So,
Would it have changed with the, no, it probably would have been the same because that stair,
unless there is a
that stair
different,
position would have been in the same position no
unless it's
matter
a
what.
different TGI thickness or something the floor system provides.
So it wasn't the floor, the depression of the floor, I don't believe caused.
But does, the height of the basement
Yes.
calls for a longer stair?
A longer stair on the bottom side, yes.
Yes.
Correct.
So if it was built to spec, the stair tread would end shorter, would you still have the tread issue? The header issue?
I would have to actually look at it. I don't know exactly what tread is causing the problem, it's not something, so I haven't looked at it from that minute of a detail. But the stair on the run down, they probably had to add one or two risers at the bottom to
get
make
to
up
the-
the height difference.
Because your height was different,
Yes,
right?
correct, yeah, absolutely.
So I think changing the floor is the.
So they didn't even mention it to you though, that the height was different?
No.
And they wouldn't, Mr. Chair, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't ask him, because that's a field thing.
I understand.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay.
I was just, as Mr. Santori has indicated, I was just trying to see if there is some kind of resolution that might work with raising the floor, as opposed to a drop ceiling.
Well, I don't see the board agreeing to a drop ceiling.
I understand. Trying to move it along.
All right, since we have the architect, are there any other architectural questions about the changes in the design? Anything about the siding, anything about the windows?
Well, I think so, yes.
Yes.
Or do you want to hold those and we'll bring that, Mr. Condutori?
I think we're going to have Mr. Condutori come back. I think
We'll move on to the.
we'll move on to,
Or do you want to go?
well, I think we.
I think I have a solution, guys, if I may interject. So your concern.
You could do that.
Reframe it with 2x4s, frame the whole structure, rip it out, permanently drop the ceiling, and re-sheet rock into a permanent thing, and we're done. And to me, I think that is something that's very expensive, okay? Penal in nature, and certainly a much more permanent element and component than a
What
drop
about
ceiling.
the stairs? You already have a clearance.
No, that issue is much easier fixed by just dropping a beam. That has nothing.
I'll find a way.
Yeah, that's not an issue for the clearance. So I do think that is a solution that hopefully gives the board more confidence regarding the permanence of it. And obviously, it's not an inexpensive thing on my client's part. So is that something that sounds more plausible?
Is it possible, just so the board understands, is it possible that you're going to need some area at the bottom of the stairs that's the existing height? If you did that?
Yeah, you probably have to have some
To have that
some
header.
kind of header clear, just in the stair area, that's it.
And is
So
that
big
also-
enough for the point where you step down?
Yes.
Is that also going to create conflict for the windows in the basement?
No, those windows are well above.
They look like they're right below the joist. On the elevation, it looks like they cut up into the felt course.
In the worst situation there, we'd have to, I'm assuming you'd want to keep them for ventilation
Yeah,
purposes, or
you would create a soffit around them,
just
like
box
a
us
little
off it.
box soffit.
Well, so that would mean that area of the basement.
Yeah, just enough for.
Yeah, no, I'm just making sure.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point.
I understand.
And how many windows are showing in the basement, Tim?
Yeah, 2, 4, 6.
Is that correct? It's 6 total in all?
I don't know if you can do this piecemeal, Joe, so.
Yeah.
Jeff, so some of the board members are asking how we approach this. Do we take each item that we have a conflict with, let's say, and make a decision at this point, or do we wait till the end?
No, I don't think we make a decision at this point. Mr. Santori has indicated a way of fixing this so that it is a permanent ceiling as opposed to a drop ceiling. The architect obviously is
But
going to.
I don't know how the board feels about that, particularly, Mr. Beekman.
We also offered up a permanent floor solution.
But if that's the proposal before the board, then the board can figure that at the end. I don't think we need to vote
Okay.
on each separate item. We'll be here all night.
I agree.
So regarding Mr. Conditor for a moment, obviously, there are other items in accordance with Ms. Alonso's direction. We had provided a plan. That plan had bubbled elements and components to it, and they went through and indicated what the original proposed condition was versus the current proposed condition. Do you want us to illustrate a couple of those things from the plans right now to finish up his component?
I think let's hold off on Mr. Conditori, and we'll bring him back for the other areas that we would like to address. Let's start with Mr. Hanna.
Okay.
And have him come up and explain some of this, what went on.
Sure.
Because I don't think it is fair to Mr. Conditori to ask him to try to figure out what went on. Mr. Hanna is the applicant.
Absolutely.
He should have the knowledge.
Sure. Yeah. Come on up, Scott. Do you want to have Ms. Bullock at least address how, like, the change in the foundation happened?
Let's start with Mr. Hanna.
Okay, that's fine. Joe, if you want to raise your right hand.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And if you could state your name for the record,
Joseph
please.
Hanna.
And please spell your last.
H-A-N-N-A.
Thank you.
Mr. Hanna, just for the record, what is your relationship to Ocean View Development LLC?
I'm the owner of the company.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I know obviously, Mr. Hanna, you've been here this whole evening, you've listened to some of the things, obviously, that have transpired so far, and, you know, obviously, there's some concerns on the board's part that, you know, this is one of these scenarios where you just kind of ran roughshod and want to pull the wool over their eyes and hope they can get caught. I mean, is that essentially, I mean,
That's
obviously, it's never.
absolutely incorrect.
Yeah,
The basement was a complete oversight. The excavator dug it down, dug down too deep. The 8-foot walls that are standard walls were put in there. The excavator should have came back in and filled in the center of that foundation. He said he was done, he wasn't. The next contractor that came in poured the slab, and that's how we got to the 7-Eleven. But I think there was some confusion from the engineering portion of it. As far as the elevation of the site was dug down too deep, and they said the elevation was not correct. They had to redo the elevation because they said the I think Donna should speak about that a little bit. Matthew should have been here. He was the engineer that worked with you guys, correct?
First, Mr. Beekman, did you swear in, Mr. Hanna?
Yes.
You did.
The project?
Yeah, so what I can say is we did correspond with Matthew Wilder from Morgan Engineering. He had reached out and provided a list of requested field changes. What I will say is I worked closely with Michelle Alonso on some of those changes. We also ran some by you, Chris. And, you know, the way it was presented to me in terms of, I also wanted to clarify, there was this general feeling that I somehow approved the sidewalk redesign in the front. You know, what I had said to everyone was that, you know, Matthew came to me and said that in order to facilitate better drainage for the site, because I guess it was lower than the adjacent properties, which, you know, made sense to me. We wanted to raise the grade up a bit. Drainage patterns were going to be maintained, and I told him that I didn't take any issue with the proposed grading and drainage changes. But you know, there were some other issues that aesthetically and how things were going.
We could talk about that, but Doug, let's talk about the elevation changes in the beginning of the project. There was 2 elevation changes. There was a first elevation change where the stormwater, I think, was a little too low. I guess the water table was too high, so the site had to be picked up.
I wasn't aware of any of that.
So you could swear Donna in, she could talk about that a little bit. Guys, I'm not an engineer. I can't speak about engineering, so.
I mean, I think the important thing, and maybe this tone or tempo can maybe start to change a little bit. I think what Mr. Clellan is stating, and you see, our engineer proposed a bunch of things. It wasn't like, here's these field changes, these are the things we're looking at. It wasn't as if we were looking to sneak something by. our professionals, we're dealing with their professionals. Mr. Hanna runs, he does development, but he also has other businesses, and we had a newborn child in the mix of the last couple months, as was it October? Yeah. So I mean, as this is getting to the last part of these changes, his wife was doing some of this work, and she's dealing with the newborn first child, and there's a lot of stuff going on in their lives besides this. It wasn't trying to. I'm not trying to excuse.
Are you trying to
anything.
dilute?
No, I'm not trying to. I'm just telling you. A lot of people would. You have to explain sometimes what's really going on in life. It's not like anybody's trying to ignore or change. As I said, he just indicated that we submitted a bunch of stuff to them. It wasn't as if we were like, oh, here, we see what you catch. And I think that's important to understand. That was we were working with them.
The foundation was an oversight on my excavator. It was my team's fault, He said he was done with the job, and he left, and that contractor, came in and did the slab, so.
Did you ever bring that to the city's attention? Did you say we made a mistake and now it's going to be too high?
No.
Once you were aware of it?
No, I did not.
But you never measured it.
No, I never measured it, I did not. I did not go back to the city with that. We did go back to the city with numerous.
But the other things happened as well, Mr. Hanna. You finished the basement. It was never supposed to be a finished space.
That space was always going to be finished. That
was never told to us. It was always an unfinished basement.
So can you explain to me, and please excuse me, can you explain to me what finished and unfinished is? Because it's not a conditioned space. I don't have HVAC, I don't have air conditioning, I don't have egress windows, so no one could ever live or be down there as per fire code. If you're saying finished is me putting down.
Perhaps Donna can clarify.
Sheetrock? Yeah, please.
You have sheetrock, you have flooring, then it's our understanding.
I mean, it's not a defined condition, but I mean, some of what Mr. Hanna is saying is correct. It's not separately conditioned or, doesn't meet the habitability requirements of the building code by having an egress window or, that's one thing, but,
And that was always just an open question.
I have to step out of my, I'm a professional planner shoes for a moment and step into, I used to be a construction manager for Pulte.
Good.
And so, when we did a finished basement, no, it did not have sheetrock. It did not have flooring. It was a slab. We'd paint it because it was a waterproofing measure. And there was no ceiling. It was just the underside of the joists.
Okay.
But, we also did foundation location surveys so that we would determine that every pour was the right depth, the right location, and the right height. So I don't know if that's a mechanism that's used in the city to verify these things, but that's where that should have been caught. That's where that mistake should have been caught.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, but it raises a lot of concerns for me, and maybe when we get to Donna, we'll find out. But, I also want to make sure we're not having a building height issue now as a result of this.
Well, where did the extra foot come from?
I'm sorry?
Where did the extra foot come from? It's excavated.
That's what I haven't been able to determine
It went
yet.
down too deep, that was the problem. Not up.
Mr. Hanna, when was the decision made to take the mechanicals other than the one hot?
For my HVAC guys, I tell them, run with whatever's most efficient, whatever's the best way to do it. So, I listen to my professionals.
But you had a plan that indicated it was going to be in the basement.
Right, but whatever my HVAC guy tells me to do, and he said this is the most efficient way, the best way to do it, I'm going to go with that. And I'm pretty sure the city of Asbury Park saw those plans and approved those plans, because in the city of Asbury Park, you guys are one of the few places in New Jersey that actually go out and inspect HVAC and mechanical.
Right, but again, we do have a disconnect between what the building department thinks is a requirement or a condition of approval, and what the board thinks is a condition of approval. So, when we get these plans, the architectural sets for resolution compliance, the full scope of that information is not necessarily transferred to the construction official, and the construction official, may not, it's not in our resolution that says the mechanical equipment has to be in the basement. I mean, you know, if this is what it's coming down to, we may have 27-page resolutions going forward, so that we detail all of this, but.
But the board isn't, you guys are not HVAC professionals. I'm not an HVAC
No.
professional, no builder.
No,
but-
but when it's represented to us, Mr. Hannah, that if it's something
Location of the mechanicals was relevant to how the basement was being used.
Exactly.
There was a conversation
Exactly.
about whether it counted for the gross floor area.
Or it was gonna be storage.
Exactly.
So that's why it's so important.
Right. I get what you're saying. So basically you're saying, well, if the HVAC was down there, then it would take away more space and make it less habitable?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
It then becomes like a mechanical room.
Well, we have the washer and dryer down there, the water heater, and we do have the mechanical room down there because all the turn-offs and all the plumbing and basically the whole control system for each unit is downstairs.
Yes, but if I had to listen to my air handler in the basement, like, you know, if I had a rec room in my basement next to where my air handler is, it's not a place I'd want to hang out.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, our systems are pretty small because they're small units. They're like 1,100 square foot units.
My house is only 1,400.
Yeah, so
Yeah, two
it wouldn't have took much space to put them down there, but
No, but yes,
regardless.
it contributes to that whole experience
If
of
I
how
go-
the
if
space
I-
is being used.
Correct.
It's not how
Which is
it's
what the-
storage.
which is what the
No,
discussion
I
was.
understand that, but if I go against what my HVAC guy tells me, he's not gonna warranty my systems.
No, that's where you come back and say, hey, I got this conflict. Board wants it here. I represented certain things to the board. My professionals are saying, it's better if it's in the attic. How do I resolve that? Now, if Michelle says, that's a threshold issue, I gotta send you back to the zoning board, that's one thing. If she says, I don't think it was a strong enough concern in the zoning board, it's not a substantial change, I will authorize it. But we need to have that mechanism. If you don't bring it up to us, how is anybody
But
supposed to
if
say?
I would have known about that, I would have brought it up to you guys. We brought up a million different other points to Michelle. We have 400,000 emails going back and forth. But I want you guys to know with the basement, listen, this house was built for me, right? My unit is the first unit. My garage is sheetrocked, insulated, and there's floors down, okay? Whether the space was 6 foot, 7 foot, or 10 foot, I'm sheetrocking and putting floors down, even if it's cold storage room. That's just the way I like things. You know, I like things very neat and clean. So, you know, that's why I asked, what is finished? What is the definition of finished?
I think it's habitable versus
I
uninhabitable.
would think it would be climate controlled, would be, you know, if I was living I need a place climate controlled, I would think egress windows would be a big thing. God forbid there's a fire down there, how does someone get out? You know.
Yeah, that's actually, you know, that is a problem, but that doesn't prevent people from doing, right?
Well, I mean, whether it's 6'11" or 7'11", it's not gonna, if somebody wants to sleep down there, it's not gonna prevent them from sleeping there.
Which is why we want it unfinished, we want it,
Right.
no questions asked, this does
No.
not appear to be someplace you would want to set up habitation. That's the whole point.
With superior walls, it comes pre-insulated. So it's not a lot to throw sheetrock up there. It's very inexpensive to do that. It's already pre-insulated. So,
I think the problem is once you add, this is like a 1+1. Once you go too deep and now you have a 7-Eleven basement, and now we don't have the HVAC system down there. Now we have this bigger area that's not just for all of our mechanicals. We have space that can be manipulated in whatever fashion, which was not what was presented to this board.
Mr. Hammond, if you walked into a room, whether it be the basement or the garage, and you saw cinder blocks, would you consider that finished?
no.
If you saw sheetrock rather than cinder blocks, would you consider that finished?
Yes,
That's the difference.
it's a good way to put it. I mean,
Okay?
I'd probably, paint the cinder blocks and make it look a little more industrial.
Okay, but that's the issue. The issue is that you made changes, that you didn't respect this board enough to inform us about these changes, and then you come after the fact trying to explain these changes, which if we allowed that with everybody in this city, where there's building going on around every corner, this will return to the wild, wild west. And that's why we're here.
Hold on.
I would do that.
Yeah, take the sheet rock down.
I would also say take that mechanical system that was upstairs and put it downstairs like you said you were going to do.
We can't do that.
Then you need to work with us.
Can't do that. Well, then.
But you could have asked us ahead of time. You could have asked us ahead of time
So
and not after the fact.
maybe it's, and look, and I know we're going back and forth and sideways in a lot of different directions. I do think what I've proposed is a reasonable fix. There is a legal standard, right? And that with us and other things you may have a problem with. But I do think a permanent ceiling that was installed at the height that it was intended to be installed at is in fact the legal solution. And it is a legal compliance, and there's nothing really beyond that. And I'm saying this, with due respect. And I'd like to see if we can maybe move, and whatever other questions you have on Mr. Hannah. No.
So I would suggest that, in part, that is correct. The question is the height of the space. That is the threshold for calculating toward floor area. How it is achieved, in a sense of permanence, is of concern to the board. But the method is also a concern because we have the stair issue and we have the potential basement window issue that complicate, the execution of it.
Would the floor raising be easier?
Again,
Present
I want to leave
less-
it to, I think the architect needs to assess the measurement of the stair situation and the location of the header with the windows in order to come up with a correct solution, whether it's floor.
So we really can't decide at this point.
I think what Mrs. Santori is saying is there is going to be a permanent solution that satisfies the height, and they're going to have to figure it out.
Right, but I think the board is going to have questions about that mechanism and if it's fully satisfies them.
Well, the mechanism is a full, any other ceiling, you would just like the ceiling on the first floor, you would frame it, right? Just like you have the joists and you hang your sheetrock, and it's the same thing. We're putting in a permanent structure to support at the proper height this ceiling, as if it would have been framed to start
And
with.
it's going to have a carve out in the area of the windows to accommodate that height of the window. Based on what Mr. Conditor said, you would have to box out, create a soffit, so that section of the floor, whether it's just directly around the windows or the full wall, that section would still be 7 feet 11 inches.
Is it possible to ask them to come back with
Well, I
both
think we're gonna have
options to
We have
see
two
what works
applications
best
on it.
in the
Are we-
space?
when are we, how much
Like
time
the
are we gonna
architect
have?
could come back with measurements and specs and what works best and present that to the board?
I think that's a fair.
We're happy to do that.
Floor raising and ceiling lowering.
I don't think they have to do both, I think they just have to be able to
No, one or the other.
represent.
We would like-
Right,
we would like
right.
to be
Yeah.
able to
Just-
choose
Yeah.
and decide if any of them are acceptable in the end.
How much time are we giving them?
I'm sorry,
How much time are we giving?
for this particular application, I would say an hour and a half for each.
So 15 more
Okay,
minutes.
so just to beat this horse to death a little bit on the ceiling. If my client were to decide, in accordance with Mr. Harris's representation, to tear the sheetrock off the walls for a moment, okay, and leave the ceiling where it was, is that also sufficient or not?
No.
No.
Okay,
the-
simple,
the
simple,
sheetrock
that's fine,
doesn't
I'm just
bother
trying to
me.
find an easy, that's okay, so, no, then, no. Okay, so, maybe we should hear a little bit from,
I'd like to answer some of their questions.
yeah, go ahead, which one?
Well, answer some of their questions for the other things that pertain to this application.
Please do, Mr.
Yeah.
Hannah. I mean, I think you're aware of the various areas that we have concerns. The windows, the asphalt, the
Sidewalk.
the
Let's just go one by
sidewalk.
one.
So, I mean, these were changes that were made without the board's consent. They were specifically testified over and over again, hours of testimony, Mr. Hannah, hours.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was all done in Zoom, and I hate Zoom. I really hate Zoom.
I hate variance.
So, please, Mr. Hannah, enlighten us why these changes were made and how we're supposed to remediate them.
Yeah.
Joe, just one thing specifically, the windows. I'd like to talk about the windows first. Joe, did the windows change at all?
No. But let's just go, I just want to go on. I just
What
want
does
to go
that mean?
one.
What does that mean? No.
They didn't change?
No, they didn't change. They're the same exact windows that were originally put on that application. In fact, those windows were ordered.
No, they were
right
not.
after it was
Not per
varied.
Mr. Conditore's drawings.
Yes, no, they were not.
Did we please show the rendering we showed before the board in the final?
The original rendering? Yeah, they show that.
Original rendering and the,
We only had
Is it the color of them, or
14
what
minutes.
was the
So the
problem?
buttons and the buttons.
That was that was the original, well, it was one of the renderings that was shown with the box window.
That's a rendering, it's not these architectural plans.
Yeah, so some of the windows on the side, like, not the size of the opening, but like the style of like the buttons in the buttons.
What are buttons?
Like those are 6/6.
The things that
We have
separate
some
them.
that are 2/2.
Oh, you talking
But
about the
the-
window grills?
These,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
not just the grids, the fact that they're like a bay, the
Yes.
way they're boxed out,
But that.
that wasn't.
Can we do a
on the floor plan.
side-by-side picture? Can we get a
We do the
side-by-side
renderings
picture of
after.
rendering in my house?
Sorry, we're all talking.
I'm sorry. I was just,
We do have the original plan. Those box windows on the second floor, they were part of the original approval. I double checked, I read the letter. I trust everything you write, so I went back. I felt like that was one issue that I did not agree in that sense, that those original on the second floor.
What's the revision date on that?
And in fact, these appeared in three, or
Those
Three of the
definitely were part of the
hearings.
original approval.
Can you just pan over?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. What's the date?
What's the latest date?
3/9/21.
That's after you
But
were
that-
approved.
They were part of the, okay, go back again. We'll go, but I have them. Revision 1 was.
Because I went through every set we had. This is when we went digital
Yeah, right here.
because of, and what's the date on those?
That is, go for it, Fran. Revision 1, 8/17/20.
That's 5 months before the hearing,
8,
5 months before the resolution.
And it's noted.
No, that's, so wait,
Yeah, 5 months before the resolution.
8/17/20. I have that set open right now, I guess.
I know what you looked at, the engineering letter at the bottom where they state issues documents that were submitted. So I used that to pull these drawings to make sure that I was looking at the same.
Maria, do you have the plans?
I do have
show
that
the
set. I'm
elevations.
sorry, yes. I'm
So,
sorry, you're right. They do show them as bays on that version.
Never mind.
No, I had it in another folder, I apologize.
No worries.
There were multiple.
I'm glad to move from one of those topics.
But it's not,
Move on to the next
Yeah.
one.
it's not
Short
what they
period of
look
time.
like on the elevations. I mean,
You mean in real life?
yeah.
Let's
No,
look
no,
at
not
the
just
side-by-side image, so you can
I'm
see how it
sorry.
looks in real life.
Elevations.
In the elevations, in three of the presentations, you had, they were not these, they were, whatever, 9, 16 lights, I don't remember how many lights.
Oh, the
there
number
were
of
a lot of
lights.
lights.
Okay, yeah.
Correct.
And of course, they were white, but,
Yes.
but it's dramatic. Look, this whole facade went from looking like one of the more historical colonials, consistent with what was all over the city, but certainly on that block, to a modern farmhouse. It's a dramatically different look. And so if you want to address the windows and you want to address the siding at the same time, and there was extensive discussion about the varied materials that you were using for the siding, including half of it being the cedar shake. And
Well, let's address one
this
issue.
can't be a mistake. I mean,
I
it's
understand.
intentional.
Let's address one issue at a time. Do you guys still have questions on the windows?
Well, Donna, they were what the plan showed?
The boxing, the like, it's a boxed bay stuck to the
Right.
frontage, yeah. Yeah, there's, different number of lights.
Right, the 6/6 or 4/4. That's
Right,
what's
the
different.
grid is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And the fact that it's black now versus white and,
The trim was
Right,
different.
well, I don't have
Do we
the
have an
renderings.
elevation?
Yeah. but those are all design elements. I guess we can move on from that, but
The window portion, you're saying?
yes.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next one. What was the next?
The siding.
Siding?
So, first of all, I wanted to say that, understand I was dealing with supply issues when I was building this house. I built this house at the worst time that you could ever build a house. That's number one. Number two, I looked in the resolution, there was nothing specifically about cedar shingles or certain colors that I had to use, and if they were, well, they weren't, but if that was spoken about, I would have came out and said, no, I don't like those colors. I didn't think that I had to abide by certain colors. I thought I get to pick my own colors.
But you were
for my
on the
own
Zoom
house.
meeting when we spoke about
Yeah.
siding and texture.
Correct.
And it was represented to this board that it was going to be cedar shake.
Okay.
And it was gonna fit into the neighborhood
Right.
scheme and the historic element that presents on that 700 block.
I thought that was more of the architecture style of the house, which I really did try to match the neighborhood, obviously with modern colors. It's not Queen Anne Victoria colors, but then again, the house to the left, to the east of me, which is a beautiful home, is purple. The house to the west of me has gray and white. The house across the street
I don't
has
know
some
that it's so
various
much the
different
color
colors.
It
as
wasn't the color.
it's what,
It's the material.
it's
It
the
was the
material at the
materials.
peak and it's the material, I believe, on the porch.
The second floor.
The
And
way,
all
second
of these,
floor.
all of these plans and all of these details and specifications were incorporated by reference in the resolution. I don't know why we're saying that they were not included in the resolution. In paragraph 5, it specifically says that that stuff is all included by
I
reference.
mean, this is what was presented to the board.
right.
Right.
For, do you like this? Yes, this is what we want, effectively,
There's a few
to satisfy
different-
the community design regulations.
There was a few different renderings, I believe, that were submitted to the board.
You were very consistent in 3 hearings. Again, and the reason I keep saying this is I had to watch all of these in the course of a day and a half. So it was drilled and drilled and drilled over again. It was the same renderings.
I mean, we at least had a break.
What?
Well, we had 4 meetings. Wendy did it all at once.
It's just very fresh, let's just say. The testimony is very, very fresh.
other on the phone.
Yeah.
So
The cedar, I'll just jump in real fast. So from a, not color change, material change, right? Let's just talk materials. We did have the border batten in the gable, that's there now. The clapboards on the bottom are there. What changed was the second floor, we had the band at the floor elevation, then we went cedar up top, right, on the second floor, right? That's pretty, everybody understands that? And then on the side, where you have the other gables coming out, we only had the board and batten on the top. They got rid of the band and brought the board and batten all the way down. So that, from a material change, that was the siding change. That's as quickly, as simply as I could describe it.
And if I understand you correctly, Mr. Hanna, your reason for making these changes was because you couldn't get materials. Is that correct?
Well, he didn't like the way it was.
So you're saying it was all the pandemic's fault that you had these problems?
You're really representing that during the entire 2 years of your build, you were unable to get those materials?
I don't remember if I was unable to get the materials. I did have a very, very short selection of materials that I could and could not pick at the time when I ordered the materials. I can't say I remember if I decided to just go clapboard or it was just what I had to choose from at that specific time.
But that's what you represent, though. You're saying that the reason why the changes were made because you couldn't get materials, correct?
I can't say that for sure, because, again, I had a very short
So then
selection.
why were these changes adopted?
Why were the changes adopted? You're saying about the cedar impressions, you're saying?
You preferred essentially, and you said.
I keep in mind that we had so many hours of testimony, Mr. Hanna, and all of those hours of testimony led us to believe a certain thing, right? And when these changes have been made, we're saying to ourselves, what was the point of sitting here for 20 hours and you're making all of those testimonies that you're going to do this, this, and this, and then we sit and find out, well, it didn't matter. Those 20 hours didn't matter.
Sorry, I know you're probably not gonna like this answer, but I don't remember speaking about the cedar impressions. I remember speaking about the style of the house, and I wanted to build something that really fit the character of Asbury Park. I've been in this area for a long time, and
but do you understand
I
what
did want that, but I
we're
gotta tell
sitting
you, I
here
really
saying to
don't remember the
ourselves?
cedar impression.
We take this position, this volunteer position that we give our time to very seriously.
As you should.
Very seriously.
Right.
And it's our job to try to maintain our community
As you should.
best as we can.
And I respect that.
And we listen to time and again, people making testimony to us. And we want to take it as fact. That's what they mean and that's what they will
I
do.
understand, but I can tell you with complete sincerity, I don't ever remember talking about the cedar impressions. If I knew it was that,
Would you like us to play you those testimonies?
I don't think that's what he's saying, Mr. Chairman. I think that I think it's
but I did have
important.
very limited supply of the stuff that I could pick, so that should also be brought into it.
I do think it's important to understand that, and, hats off to you guys. Selecting colors and dealing with those things, if you look at some resolutions, I do deal with some resolutions that are 30, 40 pages, and it tells you every little single material what it needs to be. And that's not this resolution, right? And I'm not blaming anybody for it. And what I'm saying is that color transitions and materials often change at times based upon a variety of things. And Mr. Hanna's not saying that he didn't have any specific
Please,
recollection, he liked that look.
We told you we weren't talking about color. And you also agreed to the terms of this resolution, which said, all of the plans, everything that you had submitted is incorporated by reference. In addition, your applicant is a building professional. This is not a simple homeowner who's overwhelmed by the number of decisions. The applicant chose to come before this board to ask for certain exceptions and certain variances. So presumably, it was well thought out. He had all his professionals show him his drawings. He approved all of those drawings before they came in front of this board. And so to tell us that you don't remember, you didn't think about it,
It's not that I didn't
it sounds
think about
disingenuous.
Well, it's not, but it's not that I didn't think about it. It's that I was under the impression that I could pick the materials that I liked. I was under the impression that I could pick the siding and colors and that I liked. I understand you guys paying close attention to the historical significance of the houses that fit the character of the neighborhood for a certain style Victorian house.
You came before us and you said, this is what I want to build.
Correct.
And we took you at your word, this is what you want to build.
Correct.
And it's not that.
And it's not that.
That's what I-
Mr. Hanna, can you install the cedar impressions on the second story, on the front?
I could, but I don't like that, it's just.
All right, so I think we're going to have to stop for now. This is, we've talked about this for an hour and a half. We have to give time to the other applicant that's before us. I think what Mr. Santori, Mr. Hanna, Mrs. Hanna, I think what you really need to do is sit down and talk about some of the things that we've been discussing and maybe come back to us with ideas of your own. We're not supposed to be design people. We're told by your professionals what you're going to do and how it's going to be displayed and what it's going to look like. And we sit back here and decide at that point, okay, we like this, we'll agree to it. So I think you need to take some more time and discuss this with your professionals. We'll have to carry this for now.
Okay.
So, two questions, and you're probably not gonna like them. But the first question is, when would you see the new hearing date availability for this?
Right now, it looks like May, right?
You would be looking at May 23rd.
So to that point, we obviously have a completed dwelling that's sitting, ready to be occupied. Is there a plausibility that we could get a TCO to be able to occupy that?
I don't have, first of all, I don't have the authority to give you a TCO. That's not my bailiwick.
Well, it's interesting because we're told that they can't grant a TCO because the board won't allow it.
Who says?
Because you don't comply.
Right, because
Yeah.
there's
You need
non-compliance.
variances.
Yeah.
Right, so what I'm trying to say is
If you
that
don't have
obviously.
variances, then they can't issue a CO.
I do think that these are issues that can obviously be handled through a TCO component because he's sitting on financing that obviously
Well,
needs to be.
I could say this, you're not gonna get a TCO with the basement condition the way it is now.
Right, and I'm wondering, can we at least agree that on that element?
No.
Again, it's a construction code issue.
Yeah, I mean, without there being plans before this board, they're not prepared to make a decision relative to that issue.
But hypothetically, if we need zero relief, what is the issue? In other words, if I fix the condition, what is the issue?
If you fix the condition, it has to get submitted to the.
First, we would need to see how you fix the condition. So, no, you have to provide plans.
I mean, if you fix the condition fully, 100%, and the construction office is satisfied, I think that takes it off the table of this board.
I agree.
But if there are certain design complications where you can't fix it fully,
Understood.
has to come before this board for that design change.
Okay.
So.
We don't have the authority for a TCO, Jeff.
No, I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I'm not saying, so if they're able to show the construction department a permanent fix that satisfies 100% of the issue, they've satisfied it.
Right,
The
agreed.
construction department has the ability to say, you've satisfied this, we'll give you your TCO. They could do that.
I think that that's legally correct.
I don't know how we can make that representation
You
to
can't.
that.
No, it's nothing to do with you
It has
guys.
nothing to do with us.
That's what I'm trying to
It has
say.
nothing to do
But
with this board.
we also have to talk about the driveway.
They
That's a
still
TCO
have
condition.
problems
We have-
that
Yes.
need to be resolved with the
We don't
board,
dispute that.
but
Right.
they may not be at a high enough level to prevent occupancy of the building.
Right, so a TCO can be issued when all of the safety, life safety and habitability issues are fully complied with according to the construction ordinance or the construction regulations.
Even though there's an ongoing application before this board? Okay,
So even with an ongoing application before the board, they could do that as long as the fix is not going to jeopardize the structural integrity of the dwelling.
understood.
So your yard landscaping, your driveways, that's not they're not life
No.
safety issues.
Right.
Understood.
So a TCO, and again, this is not our purview, but a TCO could be issued if the construction official authorized it.
Okay,
Thank you. So at least we understand and I can try and work. I'm not saying I'm going to be able to do it. I just want to understand the parameters of it. I do thank you guys for your time tonight. I just like to leave it saying we're trying to resolve this and I do understand your frustration. And believe me, we want to be your partners in the solution. So hopefully we can continue to work on that, present things that are going to, satisfy the board. I do thank you for your time this evening and just from a legal perspective, if we could just make the notice to carry for no further
Yeah,
notice.
do we have an issue with time? Or you'll
No.
agree to extend the
I
time?
agree to extend. I don't think we have an issue anyway. But just so that we don't have to renotice.
Yes.
Does any of the board members ever buy the house or see the house?
of course.
What don't you guys like?
Okay, so that's not the question. You can't ask us that, Mr. Hannah. No, this is strictly because of the resolution. This has nothing to do what we like or dislike.
So we don't have to renotice, just the matters being carried.
Yeah, so the matter will be carried to.
All right, so I make a motion to carry, what exactly is the, 13 Grand Point Way, Ocean View Developments to May 23rd, 2023, without further notice.
I may not
Thank you
be,
guys, have a nice evening.
I'm not gonna be available, Mr. Chairman.
I understand.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know if you guys were talking
You
about
got
the
it.
date. Apologies, okay. So motion to carry, Daniel Harris,
Yes.
Russell Lewis is recused, Jill Potter,
Yes.
Jose Alcaraz.
Yes.
John Scully,
Yes.
Chairman Avalone.
Yes. You can call Tim and
Did
Wendy.
I forget you, Tim?
Yes.
I didn't leave you up here, I'm sorry.
I'm on the floor today.
I've been on vacation the last few meetings.
Do you want to take a 5 or?
I'll make the motion to take a 5-minute recess.
And then, okay.
And I'm a whole.
All right?
John, are you okay? Okay, we will now resume the meeting. I will take roll call.
Yes, yeah.
Wendy Glassman.
Jump in if I throw a
Daniel Harris.
under the table.
Russell Lewis.
Here.
Jill Potter is recused. Tim Slick.
Here.
Jose Alcaraz.
Here.
Vice Chair John Scully.
Here.
And Chairman Christopher Avalone will be recused for this application as well. Okay?
So this is an application for 1123 Summerfield, Block 1302, Lot 23. Mr. Sigmund?
No, Mr. Brightman.
Mr. Martin?
Good evening, my name is Mark Brightman. I'm counsel for the applicant, 1123 Summerfield LLC. This application is for add an existing level to the existing property. There's a 2-story structure in the front portion of the property, and the rear portion is a 1-story. What we're planning to do is build up on the rear portion to match the level of the first floor to make it a 2-story building. Now, there's existing nonconformities with regard to the side yard and setbacks, which have existed for many, many years. And we've asked our architect and our planner to come in to address the issues raised by Ms. Miller and Mr. Sullivan in their memo. So with that in mind, I'd like to call Mr. Wolf as our
Before we do
project
that, let me just do
Sure.
some housekeeping
Go ahead.
for the board. So as the board may recall, notice was, I believe, for the February meeting, or one of the February meetings, and it was carried so that the applicant can provide a notification to the neighbor as far as offering to buy the neighbor's property, and that has been done. I have reviewed it. It is the address that was indicated in the city's tax rolls. My understanding is that the notice was returned, but it is the address that's in the tax rolls, and that's all we can ask the applicant to do. So from my perspective, the board does have jurisdiction to hear the matter and proceed based upon it being carried the last time, subject to that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. Mr. Remy, call your first witness. We'll get him sworn in.
Jonathan Wolf, please.
Mr. Wolf, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And if you could just state your name and spell your last for the record.
Certainly, it's Jonathan Wolf, W-O-L-F-T. And Mr. Wolf, your profession is?
I'm an architect, registered and licensed in the state of New Jersey since 2016, state of New York since 2014. And I own my office, Jonathan Wolf Architecture and Design.
And you're still currently licensed, is that correct?
I am licensed.
Okay.
Good.
We accept your credentials, Mr. Wolf. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, one other thing, I'm sorry. Just for clarification, I don't see it in the application, but who are the principals of the LLC, Mr. Price?
Mr. Matthew Sigmund, who's here this evening.
Only Mr. Sigmund? We need to know for the record,
Okay, it's-
everyone who owns at least
Sure.
10%.
Okay, it's Mr. Matthew Sigmund and Mr. Zachary Sigmund, 50-50.
Okay. I'd ask if you could, for the board, just submit a certification from your clients, just so we have it for the record.
Yes, sir, I will do that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Wolf, are you familiar with the property? That's the subject matter of this application?
I am, yes.
Okay, can you please describe what's existing there today and what the proposal is before this board?
Certainly, the existing single-family dwelling at 1123 Summerfield Avenue is a 2.5-story dwelling. As Mr. Brightman mentioned, the front half of the house is a full 2.5 stories, as you can see here in the existing photos, while the rear, more or less half of the house, lowers down to a single story. And as Mr. Brightman mentioned, the proposal, we would propose extending that existing second floor to match the extent of the first floor below. So there's no impact on the footprint of the grade, just simply the extension of that existing second floor.
Okay. Okay, and you reviewed the memo by Ms. Miller and Mr. Sullivan, is that correct?
I have, yes.
And you noticed, they noticed that there's some requirements for variances.
Yes, sir, yeah.
Can you explain what those need is for those variances, please?
Certainly, the variances are required as a result of the existing side yard setback nonconformities, where in the R1 zone, 6 feet is required on one side, and the aggregate combined side yard of 14 feet is required. We have less than that, particularly on the west side of the house, where it goes down to just about 1.5 feet. Those are the existing nonconformities resulting, or the proposal and the proposed expansion would.
It's not going to change them, they're just going to make them a little bit longer.
Right, it
With
is
a
an
second story addition.
expansion of the home with an existing nonconformity.
And how long is the expansion on the second floor?
Yes, it's 24 and a half feet long.
24 and a half feet long?
So a little less than half of sort of the length of the house. The house sort of evolved over time. You can see these the single-story structures appear to have been added after the original building was built, after the original home was built.
Okay.
So the existing conditions that will continue to exist, it's just going to be affected by the second story addition that's being proposed.
That's really the only change. We are proposing the renovation of the house, but as far as the massing of the building or the extension of the footprint, it's just the expansion of that second floor. I have it, it's about just 410 square feet of additional living space to match the first floor below.
Now, there's some issues raised by Ms. Miller in the memo regarding building orientation. Have you reviewed those?
I have.
And could you please address those, please?
There is a requirement, the building orientation currently sits, as you can see, quite close to that western property line. It is closer than the required 20 feet from the two adjoining residents at the adjoining property. And while we would increase the amount sort of surface area on that house on the second floor, we would not increase the distance from that adjoining house. That would stay the same as we just sort of extend the line of the existing home.
Any other items that are addressed there? Parking?
As far as off-street parking, the site doesn't currently have any on-site parking. There is off-street parking required to the tune of 2 spaces. We don't have the space on-site to accommodate that. We'll propose that that be accommodated on the street.
As exists.
Correct, yeah.
And the fence issue that's raised by the memo?
Sure, so we currently proposed pulling the fence back. The existing fence line is actually within the right-of-way. Our neighbor to the west has an existing fence. The existing fence line was consistent with the neighbors. Given the ordinance, we have proposed pulling it back to the property line. The ordinance does call for 1 foot within the property line. It's not that we wouldn't be open to moving it, but I think the fact that we've already pulled it back sufficiently relative to our neighbor's fence, we would hope that that would be sufficient. There's not much room, between the existing covered porch in the front and that fence. So it would be nice to just have as much space as we can. I would also mention, I think, really the most important thing to understand about this site, it's grossly undersized. It's really only 2,700 square feet in the R1 zone, where 5,000 would be the minimum required. So it's 54%, I think, of what a typical lot in the R1 would be.
What's the material of the new fence that you propose?
Sorry, the material for the siding?
The new fence.
Oh, for the new fence. I think we just called it, it would be an open picket fence, white vinyl on the property line. Open picket, white vinyl, and I believe that's limited to 4 feet.
In the memo, they were raising some issues as to the drainage, and that's also set forth in the memo from Insight Engineering. Can you please address how you intend to take care of the drainage on site with the new roof, et cetera?
Absolutely. So really, the amount of roof that we're sort of presenting or that will be collecting water or rainwater will essentially stay the same. The area, being that the area of roof won't change, granted it's at a different level. But really, I think we could show that the sort of roof area is equal one design to the next. Now I would propose, and we are proposing, with our open gable facade, similar to the front elevation, if we carry that open gable all the way to the rear, really we're only shedding drainage water east and west. And we can route that runoff towards the front of the site and with our leaders and drain pipes and exhaust it towards the front of the site. So that would be just sort of how the house functions with its open gable and only shedding water east and west and not towards the rear of the site. I think we could bring that water via the gutters forward towards the street and down and out. We did not, and haven't yet, or haven't had a topo plan produced. I did go into in lieu of that, I looked at the county GIS mapping software, which is currently actually shows 2-foot contours. So it is a bit helpful in just getting an idea of what contours are doing as far as grading. And I would submit this as an exhibit, which shows the topography of the site sloping from over 30 feet down to 27.4 at the street. So there is certainly positive drainage from the rear of the site towards the street. So I think that's working in our favor as well.
Why don't we mark that as A1, and you said that's the county GIS contours?
It's from the Monmouth County self-service mapping system, which is handy stuff.
Mr. Wolf, where's everything draining right now? Is it draining to the back of the property?
I'm sorry?
Where's the water draining right now? It's draining towards the back of the property?
There's probably a few different conditions, I would imagine. I can't say for sure what the leaders on the back of the property, if they are, I believe they're just surface, they drain out on the surface.
Okay.
Are there any gutters on the house today? Doesn't look like there is.
I don't believe there are any existing gutters. It's not sort of a Yankee gutter condition. I think it's just that open gable and it sort of falls off onto a drip line.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like, I don't know, do I need to be? Yeah, why don't we just make sure, even though you're sworn last here, both Donna and Doug, you swear or affirm that the testimony you provided will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We did.
Yes. Thank you. So it seems like in the existing conditions, based on the pictures that I can see, that there really are no gutters that exist. So rainwater would simply fall down on the sides of the building, and it's hard to tell without any topography where it currently goes, but it could potentially go onto a neighboring property currently. But it seems like you're adding gutters and you're pulling. I understand what you're saying. You're pulling all that forward by pitching the gutter towards the front of the house, and it'll be discharged at grade.
Absolutely.
In the front gutter, basically. Okay. Which would seem to be an improvement over the existing conditions.
I believe your testimony is there should be no increase in the impervious coverage of the footprint of the property, is that correct?
There is no increase to the footprint of the property. We are proposing a minor increase in our coverage, just with regards to the expansion of an existing open deck on the rear. It's captured here, I know it's small, but there's a small wood deck, open wood deck on the rear, and we would simply propose expanding it. And so that's an increase in impervious, and similarly our small side deck, which it does encroach on the side yard setback as well.
How much of an increase, do you know?
I do. It's the proposed rear deck is 131 square feet. about 100 square feet larger, with this, the new side deck, about 30. We call it about 130 square feet of additional open deck. It would be permeable, you know, and have typical open deck characteristics, spacing between the planks, et cetera.
What's under it?
Just earth.
No stone?
No stone or anything, nothing, nothing at all.
Anything else you'd like to add? I think you covered everything.
No, I mean, I think, you know, we're making an effort to stay, you know, true to the characteristics of the neighborhood, to improve this sort of very, sort of western block on Summerfield, and do it in a way that is, you know, improves the characteristics of the neighborhood. You know, I would mention, yeah, the fact that our neighbor to the west is actually very comparably sized to what we're proposing. And I think, you know, that the neighbor, you know, is certainly still seems in character with, you know, those smaller homes. So no, that's I think all I would have to say.
No further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you, Mr.
one. Where your windows are positioned next to your neighbor's house, I mean, there's not a lot of space there. How are we going to position them where the neighbor will still have privacy, where they won't go to that window and be able to look directly into their house?
Sure. I'd like to show you the western elevation. It has fewer windows than the eastern side.
Yes,
We've tried to face sort of away a bit from that western side. It is a very close condition, such that, you know, we don't want to kind of highlight it or create any sort of privacy issues. But, so yeah, we are aware certainly of the neighboring home and our proximity to it. You know, the effort has just been to not create, you know, an overly, too much of a visual connection between the two.
Yeah, do their windows line up, do one house's windows line up with the other house's windows? That's
You know what, I'd be happy to take a closer look at that. I can't testify for sure that they line up or they don't. I would imagine, you know, the heights are sort of similar, so, but as far as alignment, I can't say for sure. I'd be happy to look into it.
Yeah, I just think privacy is very relevant to it.
It looks like it only impacts one of the neighbor's windows.
Right, very
So
similar.
it's just important to make sure that you don't have a window directly across.
Okay. Right.
Mr. Wolf, the side porch, what's the dimensions on the side porch?
I have it at 20, just about 28 square feet. I would imagine, well, I can measure it, but I think it's about, you know, 3 by 8 or so. And then with the steps in addition, it's really only at this point the steps that are encroaching on that setback. I don't want to volunteer a change to those steps, but I think that they could be sort of reconsidered to not impact that or exacerbate that condition.
Right, could they come maybe towards the front or the back?
I think that would be a good solution, yeah, we talked about that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other board members with any questions, comments? No?
So this is one.
Yes. Any members in the public that have any questions for Mr. Wolf? Think we have anybody from the public?
We may have some questions.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
So-
Jumped right over you guys, I
Harris's
apologize.
concern, I was just curious if you had evaluated the location of the existing windows on the adjoining property and used that in consideration for where you had the window placement in your design. So the answer to that is no. So.
Right, no, it is not. My windows were generated from the inside out, not, yeah.
So so let me just see here. So I see you have 1, 2, 3, 4 windows on the second floor facing the neighbor, one of which is in the master bedroom. 2 of them are in hallways.
I can kind of walk you through those plan locations.
So,
Yeah.
so, and usually the board is concerned with obstructing windows on neighboring buildings. And again, from what I can observe, it looks like there's one specifically that will be obstructed by the new addition. So I don't know if there's anything that, again, because of its placement, I don't know if there's really anything that can be done to alter the addition to not obstruct that existing window.
If I may.
Sure, certainly.
I think, if I sort of been reading the photo right, I would imagine that perhaps this window here might be the closest to conflicting with the neighbor on the west side, sort of our second one here. Maybe their window falls here. This window here, it's on a little bit of a hallway that enters into the primary bedroom. If it was, a matter of removing that window, doing something differently, maybe it's a third story.
My problem is obstructing light, air, and open space for your neighbor.
Okay.
By having an addition.
Sure.
Yeah, so I can't tell from, the various imagery that was available if there are any other windows on that facade.
Okay. Yeah.
Can't do anything about those, but the one he does have that gets light, air, and open space, you're gonna be closing off, yeah. So, but I don't see any alternative to that.
Okay.
I mean, I guess the fact is the neighbor was there first sort of gives the neighbor sort of, we can't say that, we'd be sharing that blocked condition. They would sort of be blocking us similarly, although I understand they were there first.
Well, they're not really blocking you, you have the other side open to you.
Right. Can we assume that their other side is open? I won't assume anything, but I could have a look and get back to you and let you know.
I mean, that
The other
might
side is-
alleviate some concerns of the board. But, we don't know what the floor plan is of their building, so we can't say if it's, a room that doesn't have access to the other side. It's really a shame you guys couldn't get that other lot.
I will say, Mr. Wolf, with regards to the movement of that one window, I think Mr. Harris had said his concern was that the windows would match up. So can that one window be moved on the plans?
Absolutely. The plan on the second floor there, that window location is not, it's not like a kitchen sink window where it's, more difficult to relocate. I think we could absolutely look at either relocating it, perhaps omitting it.
Can I get sworn in? Can I participate? Look and see. Why don't we finish with
As soon as we're done.
Right.
And just for clarity, is that bedroom 1 or bedroom 2 window that we're talking about?
You know what, it's the access back to the primary master bedroom.
I think it's technically a hallway window.
It's a bit of a hall, yeah. It's within the sort of master suite, but it's not, it's not really within the main room. It's sort of here across from their closet.
Okay.
I have a question about the side deck. It's how far is it from the next property? Because you have the steps going there, and it seems that it's already too
We're down
close.
about 7 feet as far as that side set off of that sideline.
So from the last step to the next property, 7
I
feet.
believe it's 7 feet is what we last calculated on my handy scale. I'd have to look at the.
Because in your layout it's 9.2, and then it says that it's a 30 square feet, so it doesn't add up.
Okay. Here,
sorry.
I'll just pull it quick.
What do you ask?
The side.
The side deck.
Yeah, the depth, the width of the.
No, the question is, how far is the last step to the next property?
Oh, the last step, okay.
Side yard setback.
So you have 9.2 feet.
Yeah, I had dimensioned about 3 feet on our set of plans.
Yeah, that's
That's from the
absolutely right.
building.
That's absolutely right.
But if you move the steps to the front or the back, does it still encroach on the setbacks?
So no, really, the edge of our landing for that, for the stairs is really right on the side yard setback at 6 feet. So if we were to relocate those steps, I think we could keep the entire
Surface of the
deck
deck?
assembly within the buildable area of the site.
Okay.
It is a very small site, yeah. Challenging one.
Okay. Any other questions from our
I just want
professionals?
to clarify a couple things, because obviously any ordinance that's written is written by me. Any resolution. So the side yard setbacks, it's 1.5 feet on the west side, correct?
Correct.
No. And is it 10.7 feet or is it 7.7 feet on the east side? Or is that combined? Combined, I guess.
The aggregate.
What's the combined?
I have, yeah, a combined
Inches or feet?
10.7 feet
10.7?
is my combined.
And-
Oh, no, right. Without the steps.
So it's 10.7 to the dwelling?
Yeah, combined.
Right,
Yeah,
but what is it
so-
to the, even if you bring those steps back, what is it to the steps? Because I think that's what
It'll
our
be 7.7.
setback.
So it would be, that's 6, it would be
What's the
3.2.
So 7.7 to the platform.
I think that's where the 7.7 came from in my mind, yeah.
Combined.
Combined,
Yeah.
yes. Yep. All right, just wanted to make sure. And then in here, you have a rear yard setback, existing 32.6 feet, and this is in your plan, Mr. Ward. 32.6 feet, required 25, but then you show no change. But I believe there is a change, is that correct?
There's
Rear
there's no change in the setback of the dwelling itself. The change, the open wood deck at the rear
Right.
would get expanded 4 or 5 feet, it's not much.
But it'll comply with 25 feet?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Just want to make sure it's going to comply with 25 feet, because the ordinance goes to the deck, not to the.
Okay,
to the-
yeah,
the
so,
structure.
okay.
Okay.
Steps down or permitted approach.
Steps down can encroach. Yes. And impervious coverage, that 40.2 accounts for the additional deck space, both landings?
Yep, it does with landings, yeah.
All right, thank you.
No other questions from our board professionals? No? Okay. We'll open up to the public for any questions for Mr. Wolf. Seeing nobody from the public, we will close. Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
I'd like to call Mr. Matthew Sigmund, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, Mark, I'm gonna leave these with you, it's additional copies of that, of the topo.
Yep.
You want to read ordinances?
Then Mr. Sigmund sworn, please.
Oh, yes, Mr. Sigmund. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
And if you could state your name for the record, please.
Matthew Sigmund,
Spell just, again, for the record, spell your last name.
S-I-G-M-A-N.
Mr. Sigmund, what's your relationship to the applicant?
I am an owner.
Okay, and that's with your brother Zachary?
Correct.
The only two owners of the company, is that correct?
Correct.
What is the business of the applicant?
There's various businesses that we do, primarily, I would say, commercial real estate development in town. We do things pretty much Asbury, Neptune, Long Branch, related to real estate, lending, investing, developing, etc.
And do you hold any licenses?
I do. I'm a licensed real estate broker, and I have my license in town here in my office at 700 Emory Street.
Now, what is your intention for this property as to what you plan on doing?
So it's a story. So, I acquired this property at the auction. I walked it, and it's funky. It was more cats than anything else in there. We cleaned it out, demoed it out, and when you just went to the second floor, it just really wasn't, laid out economically, feasibly. It didn't make sense.
And I do this a lot in my business, and you're like, why did somebody do that? What were their thinkings? And you don't really know. You know, you peel back layers of outside, inside, and it just tells a story of different people over the years. You know, these buildings have been around hundreds of years. And for whatever reason, we just didn't understand the second floor. And basically, you know, hoping we could get a variance here, we looked at it and said, hey, you know, we're not going to increase the footprint. We know it's not conforming, but we think it would be a way better house in an urban area where people are always looking for, you know, I think more size in our area here where people want to be and live. So we're here before you asking for the variance so we can kind of create a very nice enhancement to this house in this particular area of the town.
Have you figured out any finishes for the outside of the house this time?
I mean, we've done a lot of these around town. We basically do a nice vinyl around the outside. And, you know, I believe one of the earlier letters of the planners was to call out some ornate characteristics of the property. So I selected scalloped siding in the front, which I thought is nice. We've done that in the past around here. There's an element, not on this page that I'm looking at. It's okay. But the staircase is on the west side. And you can see we did like these 3 little windows that kind of give it a little bit of flair. We thought the windows were nice, the crisscross. What do you call that, round over one? What would you call those windows?
It was just the 2/2 pattern.
2/2 pattern, which we thought was a nice aesthetic. That's the answer for the materials.
I have no further questions.
All right. Any board members, any questions for Mr. Ziegman? Nope. No? Board professionals, any questions? No?
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, open up to the public, just for the record. Nobody from the public? Thank you, Mr. Ziegman.
Well caught. Justin Osiello was our planner. Please have him sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Again, state your name for the record.
Justin Auciello, Auciello.
Thank you.
Licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I've been licensed since 2008. I've appeared in front of your board about 10 years ago. It's been a while, but I've appeared all throughout Monmouth County and actually 20 counties in the state as well. And I represented the applicants like this on many occasions over the years.
Like to offer,
Licenses are still,
sorry.
Valid and current, yes.
Like to offer him.
We accept your credentials, Mr. Osiello. Thank you.
Just so you're familiar with the project?
Yes, I am.
And have you reviewed the memo from Ms. Miller and Mr. Sullivan dated April 6, 2023?
I have.
And could you describe the neighborhood for us?
Sure. So this neighborhood obviously is on the west side of the city. The neighborhood is predominantly single-family, 2-story houses, especially right in the context of this area. Really, what's proposed is, as you heard from the architect and the applicant, what's proposed really is not a radical change, with the exception obviously of the enhancement of the building than what currently exists, especially as you're walking down the street. So this project is going to be substantially consistent with the character of the neighborhood.
Okay, and you're aware that under New Jersey law, we have to prove the positive and negative criteria regarding the granting the variance?
I am.
Have you reviewed that and analyzed it as it applies to this project?
Yes, I have. So as the board is well aware, we're here obviously for a permitted use in the R1 zone. The issue is not whether the use fits within the character or fits within the zoning. It does. The issue is that we have two variances, two bulk variances. And the standard for a bulk variance is seen under the C1 criteria, which is a hardship, and C2, which is a public benefit. We did issue the buy-sell letters, and the buy-sell letters, unfortunately, to the neighbor was not returned. I would say, relative to the deficiencies with the lot size, lot width, front yard, et cetera, those cannot be cured because obviously the applicant cannot expand the property. Obviously, this is substantially undersized. 5,000 square feet is required, 27 square feet is proposed. So the applicant has made an effort to cure, or at least to reduce. However, there's no way it's going to be done. The effort was made. So I would say that under the C1 criteria for the existing conditions, which are not going to be changing, I would say that the proof can be met and that relief can be granted. For the C2 variances, the standard that is whether the benefits of the variance request would outweigh the detriments. The detriments can't just be any detriment. It needs to be a substantial. It needs to be to the level where it's going to create a serious issue within the context of the community. You did hear much testimony from the architect relative to the side yard variances. Again, the side yard, by virtue of the extension of the second floor, there's no change to the footprint. It's really being driven vertically. I would say, from the perspective of weighing the positive and the negatives with that, I would say there are clear benefits not just to the functionality of the property itself and the building itself, but it's a betterment to the community. It enhances, I would say, the block from a planning standpoint. We always look to situations which can create a positive domino effect. And I would say in the context of the street and in the context of this area, of the western part of the city, I would say that that variance can be granted, given the fact that there's no impact to the footprint, and I think that the benefits of granting that variance do outweigh the detriments. For the combined side yard setback, again, you heard the testimony from the architect. That of course is being driven by the deck, or the decks, which I believe the deck in itself is a benefit to the functionality of the property. It adds more character to the property, and I would say that, given the fact that the combined is being driven by that, there's no obviously expansion of the footprint. And of course, on the eastern side of the property, it's more open because the lot is vacant. I would still say, weighing the positives and negatives, no substantial detriment for that variance. There are some purposes of zoning that would be advanced with this application. I think general welfare criteria A of the MLUL is certainly advanced. The applicant is taking property that certainly is in need of some TLC, and it's going to be a positive benefit for the community. So I would say that this is certainly benefits for general welfare, not just for the applicant, because variances can't just be granted for an applicant, they need to be granted to the public betterment. And I would say that obviously general welfare is advanced. Visual environment criteria, certainly it's desirable what's proposed. I'm not an architect, and I'm not going to belabor the testimony of the architect and then the added comments by the applicant relative to the building design, but certainly it's a much improved condition if these variances are to be granted. Lastly, that's positive criteria. For the negative criteria, certainly no substantial detriment to the public good, even though there are two variances that are required. You've heard the testimony. I think the variances obviously are certainly not going to rise to the level of much of any detriment, certainly not a substantial detriment. And lastly, your master plan, as stated on page 4 of Ms. Miller's report, talks about the protection and the enhancement of the quality and enjoyment of the residential neighborhoods to promote quality of life and negative impacts. Certainly, I think the improvement of this property enhances and just that. It talks about to enhance the character of the neighborhoods that support and reinforce these uses. I think given this is an improvement to residential use, an improvement to the area, we can advance that, and the housing objective as well in your master plan. Improvement creating safe and quality housing is a substantial benefit. And lastly, I should just go, very briefly through the waivers or design exceptions. The standard of proof for design exception is different than the standard of proof for C variance. This one is really ask the board to view whether the granting of the exceptions are reasonable. And if the literal enforcement is practical or would exact hardship on the applicant. The exceptions, as you heard from our architect, off-street parking. There's currently no parking on the site. I would say that, my view of the site, I walk the neighborhood today, there is sufficient parking to accommodate. Separation of buildings, obviously there's really nothing we can do here with that, and you did hear the testimony of the architect. I think it is reasonable to grant that exception and the fence setback as well. You did hear from the architect who provided testimony on that, and I think what's proposed is reasonable as well. So all in all, the benefits do outweigh the detriment, or detriments, and certainly in a substantial way.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. There was a question regarding the tree. There's one street tree in front of the house right now. Don, I believe you made a comment in your report.
I wasn't able to get out there and actually, get an assessment of the condition. If it's fine, it's fine. If it's not, maybe the Environmental Shade Tree Commission.
It looks like there's a couple of mature trees in the front of the property. Can you talk about the treescape on the front of the property and the green strip, or maybe Mr. Sigmund can talk to that?
The trees in front.
There's trees in front.
They're alive last year. Were they alive last year?
Alive last year? If they're, I'm just
They
using
should
common
be
sense.
starting to put leaves on there.
Yeah, if they're nice, tall, healthy trees, then I suspect they're continuing to be.
And is it your plan to keep those nice, tall, healthy trees in the ground?
I'm a tree guy, I like trees.
And do you know about the street trees, which are the trees planted in the green strip on the city property on the other side of the sidewalk? Are you familiar?
I don't believe I can touch those, right?
You're not supposed to, no.
Right. So
You can touch them.
You can touch them, yes. You can go up and hug them and say you love them.
We got it. So the trees on the sidewalk, if they were placed there, and I don't believe as an owner, we own that part of the land anyway, so.
You don't. I'm asking, are there trees planted in the green strip in front of this
I do
property?
not know that, no.
There is, like I said, I just don't know if it's
Okay, but you're not planning on removing any trees anywhere?
I'm not planning on removing any trees, however, I will probably look at any branches or any.
That's fine.
Angling.
Pruning is reasonable, okay.
Or and just, I don't want to belabor it, but if we go, if it's like leaning over, you want to trim it so it doesn't fall.
You're allowed
into the house,
to
just
prune trees on the property. Right. But you're not planning on removing anything?
No, sir.
Okay.
As gutters, are you putting gutters on the house?
You're asking me the
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I believe the architect, the planner mentioned that there's nothing there. The house is dilapidated, so, But we are gonna have, ditched gutters, so all the water will go to the front of the house onto the street.
Okay, it won't dump into the yard of the people next door then, that's my point.
Correct. I think currently it definitely just goes across and splatters and goes left and right, or rather east and west. However, we'll take all the water and I believe we'll face it south, because the house has southern exposure, so it'll go south into the street, which is Summerfield.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Board professionals? Anybody in the public? Nobody in the public? Mr. Esposito, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brightman, anybody?
I think we met the test of the requirements for the variance. I think we're going to be improving the site. We're going to aesthetically improve the site and the house, and we ask that the board grant the variances as requested.
Mr. Beekman, do we still need to do a motion to open up to the public if there's nobody here?
You do have
Yes.
to do a motion for public comment, yes. That was
Okay.
one of the questions.
All right, propose motion to open up for public comment.
I'll second.
Wendy Glassman?
Yes.
Daniel Harris?
Yes.
Russell Lewis?
Yes.
Tim Slick?
Yes.
Jose Alcaraz?
Yes.
John Scully?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Seeing nobody from the public?
Wait, that's
Yeah, sorry. Seeing that there's nobody from the public, I
yes.
appreciate it.
Kind of a couple steps.
It is getting late. I make a motion to close the public comment.
I'll second.
Wendy Glassman? Daniel Harris?
Yes.
Russell Lewis?
Yes.
Tim Slick?
Yes.
Jose Alcaraz? Vice Chair John Scully?
Yes. I make a motion to approve the application for 1123 Summerfield.
I'll second it.
Do you have any conditions?
Yes.
Because there were some conditions.
I think the conditions for the steps on the side to be either sent to the front or the back. The window on the second floor was going to be moved. And can we put the condition in there for, do we need it for the gutters
Yeah.
and the runoff?
Yeah, we better.
All right, so here's what I have.
Oh, you have a problem?
If this helps.
Let's see the first.
Yes, I did. Sorry.
Does the board have any issue with the fence on the property line as opposed to 1 foot off the property line?
They're going to move it 1 foot off, correct?
No, they're proposing to be on the property line.
They're already moving it back from the
They're
existing.
moving back from the
Back from the
right of way,
existing.
yes.
Okay.
Just want to make sure.
I don't have an issue.
I don't have an
They're
issue.
going to add gutters. The drainage will go towards Summerfield Avenue and not toward the neighbors. The open deck to the rear will not extend into the rear yard setback, so it'll be at least 25 feet from the setback. There'll be no stone underneath the either deck. And it'll just be earth underneath. No window on the west side, should be directly across from the neighbors to the west. The step setback platform the steps will go north-south as opposed to east-west or east.
And the edge of the deck will not extend into the side yard setback.
And the edge of the deck will not extend into the side yard setback, correct. The finish will be vinyl with some scallop siding in the front. And the applicant says that the trees will not be removed other than for pruning.
Okay. Sounds good.
Your second stands on that, Mr. Harris?
Yes.
All good? Okay. I will take, motion to approve anyway. Wendy Glassman?
Yes.
Daniel Harris?
Yes.
Russell Lewis?
Yes.
Tim Slick?
Yes.
Jose Alcaraz?
Yes.
Vice Chair John Scully?
Yes.
Application
thank you.
approved, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Brightman. Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.